Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Nuhu-Sulemana. I'm with Rutgers State University. Thank you so much for welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm really glad that you could join us. This webinar is hosted by the Department of Behavioral Health Recovery through Washington State Care Authority. So this is an interactive training and we encourage your participation through asking questions. Please feel free to either unmute or put in the chat. So I just want to say welcome again. And another housekeeping items are that please note that there's before that the use of automated note-taking bots or similar tools during the Washington FCS train events or meetings require prior approval. Unauthorized use of such tools is prohibited and is to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of all attendees. And finally, also any recording that is created through AI is not recognized as an official recording of this session. We reserve the right to exit trainees from the training if they are using AI to take notes without prior approval or using AI to record this session. So at the end of the presentation, which I may be done with, I think, a little bit maybe 5 or 10 minutes to be able to put in the survey in the chat and also provide you with the handouts and PowerPoint slides for today. Also, we do email it over so they could upload it for you to have it on, but I'm going to, put it also in the chat. So if anybody has any questions about the housekeeping items, please let me know before we get started. All right. So we're going to go over teaching employment related skills, specifically responding to feedback on the job. My name is Nuhu-Sulemana. I am one of the senior training and consultation specialists with Rutgers Integrated Employment Institute within the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation. So today our session will focus on responding to feedback on the job site, mostly with teaching individuals with disability. This specific skill that is often or even when they are very good at the technical part of their job. And I'm sure some of you have experienced where your individuals are excellent at their, that technical aspect of their job. However, they struggle around soft skills areas such as responding to feedback, having conversations with colleagues, or even just personal conversation with maybe family members and friends, and also responding to, feedback on the job site. So throughout this session, we'll be using a simple teaching model called SCAF. This model breaks feedback response into teachable steps. So we want to make it possible for our individuals to be able to take you're unmuted. Hi, everyone. Okay. So throughout this session, we'll be using the simple tool of SCAF. This model breaks down feedback responses into teachable steps that can be practiced and refined. So even though you can put your responses in the chat or just feel free to unmute. We're a very small group and it will be nice to be able to hear from you. So also you are welcome to participate in anyhow you choose to. Some people may want to do emojis or smile, however is comfortable to you, but I would, encourage participation. So today's training objective. So before we dive in, I want to take a moment to review what you're going to gain from today's training. So the first is we're going to reframe responding to feedback as a skill that can be taught, right? Many times, feedback challenges are labeled as attitude problems or when they're really skill gap. It's not that the person cannot receive feedback, it's just maybe they don't have that skill, right? So, the next, we are going to look at why this skill matters so much in the real workplace and explore when feedback typically happens because it often is more subtle than we expect, right? And finally, we are going to spend most of our time on how to teach this skill using the SCAF model. You will leave with concrete strategies you can use with your individuals on how to support them respond to feedback effectively. So now, what is responding to feedback? So, in one word, how what would you associate feedback? So, what is feedback in one word for you? How would you describe feedback using only one word? Feel free to put in the chat. Okay. So, feedback, gift, okay. Knowledge, I see knowledge, I see gift. Okay. So, in one word to describe feedback, these are all good. Thank you. More is coming in the chat. I see recommendation, teachable, insight. Okay, excellent. I think these are all good. So, responding to feedback, it's not about agreeing with everything, right? Someone says, or it's not about just being passive or submissive, which we know most of our individuals are either passive about things like that or agreeable, right? So we also want to clarify that responding to feedback has that it's informational, it's not punishment, right? But sometimes the whole mindset of feedback, it's more of like, oh, feedback is always when I've done something wrong, right? So responding to feedback is about being professional, regulated, and employable, right? So many of our individuals with a disability experience primarily criticism or punishment, and that's when they know that's feedback. That history shapes how feedback it's how they feel the feedback that is given to them. So part of our role, we want to be able to help our individuals understand that feedback it's not just negative, right? So because feedback comes to us and has that negative connotation, or they've been criticized a lot, even when they're recognized, our individuals are recognized for doing something well, they're minimize that um, positive feedback and just treat it as if it doesn't matter. It's just the negative part of it that does, right? So or not negative or just like however the person so again, it's how feedback is given. It can be negative, positive, right, to that individual. So, what reactions have you seen when someone received corrective feedback at work? What are some of the things that you've seen, maybe with your individuals, if they've received a corrective feedback at work? You feel free to put in the chat or unmute, or we can come back to it later. So, types of feedback there are positive feedback, corrective feedback, and informational feedback. And so workplace feedback comes in different forms. We all know that. We all work, we've all received some of one of, or if not all of these feedbacks before, right, at our job places. So, positive feedback recognizes what an employee is doing well and helps build confidence and motivation, right? So, it helps that individual build that confidence and motivation because if you hear positive feedback, so I'll give you an example. When I worked as a job coach and I was supporting one of my consumers on site, I would always say to her, great job. Like I always use great job, right? So she was always motivated and she did her work so well. And then not intentionally to take away, I would said, good job. And she said to me, Mendea, when you say great job, when you say good job, I don't feel like I'm doing well because I'm used to you saying great job. Right. So I didn't even recognize that she was able to see great job as a positive feedback and me using the word good job as not a so positive feedback for her. Right. So that great job increased her confidence and motivation. Another one is corrective feedback. So corrective feedback is what needs to change in order to meet expectations or improve performance, right? So we have corrective feedback. We all work so hard in the roles that we are in and the type of jobs that we do. We are constantly evolving. We're constantly self-reflecting. How could I have made this session better with the clients, either job development or either going into their community to help them look for work or advocating for them? What could I have improved, right? On. So that's, and so for our individuals, it could be, I'm doing this role well, but how could I have done it better? Right. And finally, informational feedback that provides reminders, clarification, or, guidance without praise or correction. So, there maybe next time remember to clog in before you start work, something like that. So those are more, or something that, okay, you did all these steps well, but you're missing this specific step to complete the task. So many of our individuals notice corrective feedback most often, which can make work feel discouraging. So they're used to that corrective feedback, right? So teaching all these three types of feedback does help our individuals have that balance, that it's not all wrong, that it's not only they only hear feedback when they're doing something wrong, but there's also positive feedback and corrective feedback that has, provide that overall balance for them. So feedback comes, as we talked about, feedback comes in different ways. So positive feedback is like praising them, which our individuals may mostly dismiss or minimize. Informational feedback may be more registered to them because they think that is actual feedback, right? Okay. So now, what put in the chat using one word why you think responding to feedback matters. Just put in the chat one word. Why do you think this skill matters to teach our individuals? To teach it to our individuals, to be skilled at it. Okay, I see something coming in the chat. Guidance, it provides them with guidance. Okay, excellent. So teaching the skill responding to feedback provides our individuals with guidance. Okay, I see helps employees and employers. Absolutely. Awareness. Absolutely. These are all excellent reasons, right? So what is the overall goal that we want? Respect. Yes. Thank you. Encouragement. Absolutely. So these are all excellent reasons why the skill responding to feedback matters, right? So the critical overall we want to talk about is that the individuals, I see assurance they are doing their job. Excellent, correct. Very good. Thank you so much. So being able to responding to feedback is critical for job retention, right? Because if you can retake feedback, that means you cannot keep the job, right? So there are some individuals that I've worked with in the past when they're giving feedback, they have a whole like outburst about it, right? Because that's not what they don't want to hear it. It's not something that they want to, listen to. So many of our individuals do lose jobs, not because they lack technical abilities. And I think we've all kind of seen it in the site on the field in the community, but because feedback feels threatening or confusing or personal to them, right? When learners are not taught how to respond, they may shut down or become defensive, right? Or avoid feedback altogether. Behaviors that employers often misinterpret as poor attitude or lack of motivation. So I don't know if anybody has experienced this where that your individual has responded negatively to feedback on the job. And you as a job coach, you go in to try to advocate for them about, oh, this is, they do have challenges accepted. And the employer is probably like, I'm sorry. If I let them stay, that's showing that it's okay for the other employees are observed with present. And I don't want them to think it's okay. So they're sadly going to let your individual have to go just because they don't want to give the wrong message to others. So it's important that us, service providers teach our individuals how to respond to feedback. So teaching individuals how to respond to feedback also provides that predictability strategy that reduce anxiety. So sometimes it's just they don't know how to respond, so it has increase in anxiety. We could help them improve their communication with their supervisors or colleagues to create that positive supervisor relationship, right? Build that positive relationship and support independence at work. So when this skill is taught well, feedback becomes information for growth rather than a barrier of employment success, right? So this is where we connect the skill directly to employment outcomes. So many job separations are not about productivity, they're about communication breakdowns, right? So when someone responds defensively, shuts down, or avoids feedback, supervisors we know may think that they are willing to be receptive or the feedback. So this may cause a negative experience for them at the job. So now common workplace feedback are supervisors correction, which some of you have probably seen, co-workers suggestion, performance check-in, and customer related feedback. And feel free to, share, unmute or share have if you've observed any of this or have actually sat in where your individual gets feedback from their supervisors or colleague or have struggles around accepting feedback. So feedback doesn't only happen during formal reviews, right? We know that. In fact, most of the feedbacks happen every day on the go. So depending on what type of job, like for example, let's take retail for example, most of the feedback is probably on the go, right? The supervisor may be walking around and then observe that something is out of place and he may come back to actually show your individual how to do it. So that's supervisor's correction. They're showing how to actually do the task on site on the go, not just that formal sit down, let's do, not the ones we get, right? So these scenarios are common across industries, right? So retail, food, healthcare, office setting. How workplace feedback occurs everyday interaction, not just formal evaluations. So common scenarios include some of the what I've mentioned on the slide, and these moments are normal as part of workplace across, so because feedback often happens quickly and informally, our individuals may feel caught off guard, right? Which may cause them to feel maybe nervous. So teaching common feedback scenarios ahead of time helps them recognize when feedback is occurring and respond calmly and professionally. So if anyone, if you could all put in the chat, which of these scenarios tend to be the most challenging for your individuals for you to support them in? Is it the supervisor's correction, coworkers' suggestion, performance check-ins, or customer-related feedback? Which of these are most challenging for your individuals? Supervisor's correction. Okay. I could see that. How do they respond about how do they feel about supervisor's correction? Is that they feel that some of them misinterpreted that the supervisor doesn't like them, right? What else? What is another one that you see? Feedback scenarios that okay. Performance check-ins. Yes, I see that. Because yeah, supervisors corrections, performance check-in, two big ones. How about coworker suggestions? Anyone? Or customer related feedback? For some of those of your individuals who may be providing customer service, right? Anyone? All right. So feedback happens in many ways, right? So how our individuals, I from working on in the field with individuals with disability, they are able to observe, taking into account tone of voice, body language, indirect language, and written or electronic messages. So feedback is not only direct or spoken clearly, right? And in the workplaces, feedback may be communicated through tone of voice, right? So if the tone of voice is, people read tones differently, body language differently, and may interpret it to what it really may not actually mean, right? So, for our individuals, we know the tone of voice is important, how you're speaking. Some managers just always speak loudly, right? So, for someone that does not know how to take in a someone with a really loud, commanding voice, it can it can almost sound threatening to them, right? So, so also, so such things like next time or I notice and written or electronic messages like emails or texts can also be misinterpreted. Of like they can because as you know, text message you can have a tone. It's like written. We actually include a tone in text messages and emails, but if we just decide to read it as is, it's actually so plain, right? We can, so because these signals can be subtle, many of our individuals may miss feedback when it is intended to be helpful, right? So teaching individuals to recognize these different forms of feedback reduces confusion and helps them respond effectively. So when our individuals understand feedback, they can look and sound, it can look and sound differently. They're able to be better prepared to spot and use it to succeed at work. So they're not taking it as, oh, this is the boss that's coming for me, or this is the colleague that does not like me, or why am I the only person always getting this feedback, right? Or maybe I don't want to work at this job anymore because they don't know how to receive feedback. So one feedback that is hard is because it's not always obvious, is the change in tone, right? So a look or an indirect language. So next time, it depends on how the person says it, right? So if the person's, oh, next time, right? Or next time, it depends again, the tone can make a difference, can all be feedback. Or many individuals with disability, again, miss these cues, not intentionally, but because they haven't been taught what to look for. So that's why the first step of SCAF is spot and feedback, which we're going to go into the teaching method, teaching model using SCAF. So SCAF means spot feedback, clarify feedback, answer professionally, and follow up. So SCAF is a teaching model, not a behavior expectation of our individuals. So it gives learners a predictable routine they can rely on when feedback feels stressful. So first they want to step back to think, spot how to spot the feedback, which we're going to dive into each of this step at a time. So how to spot a feedback, how to clarify the feedback. So it gives the learners predictable routine they can rely on when feedback feels stressful, right? The goal is not perfection because we're not perfect. Learning is a continuous process, right? Is the consistency. So you notice that SCAP aligns directly with the objectives we talked about in the beginning. And so I would like everybody to type S if you've seen someone miss a feedback, and type C if you've seen someone react strongly to feedback. So type in the chat S if you've seen someone miss a feedback, and type C if you've seen someone react strongly to a feedback, to receiving feedback. C, okay. I see S. C. So it seemed like S. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. So it seemed like we have more C's than S or equal amount. Okay. Okay. It's almost seemed like equal amount. So you've seen most people miss feedback rather than react strongly to feedback. That's interesting. Okay. So the first one is spot feedback, right? So we want to notice when feedback is happening. C. Okay. I apologize. Let me go back to that slide again. So C for you've seen, and if anybody is comfortable, please feel free to share what was the feedback and why did they react strongly to that feedback? And for those who put S, if you want to share what feedback that they missed, that would be nice to know. Like an example, you don't have to give the exact scenario if you're not comfortable, but you could just provide us with maybe a vague example if that's comfortable to you. If you're concerned about, disclosing information. So not sharing the client's name, of course, or anything that relates to them, but just, what was the feedback? For those of you who put S, you've seen someone miss feedback. And for those of you who put C, if you've seen someone react strongly, just you could provide a brief scenario around that. That would be nice. Or you could unmute. You don't have to type all of that too. Feel free to unmute and share. Okay. Okay, so let's start off with spot feedback. So, how do we spot feedback? So, spotting feedback means recognizing that feedback is happening, that the feedback is happening before reacting. So, if our individuals don't know how to recognize feedback, they can't respond skillfully, right? So, this step is especially important for our individuals to interpret feedback as not being in trouble. All right. Yes, absolutely, Arona. Yes, if the person, of course, doesn't understand the feedback, they may overreact because they're interpreting it in a way that it's not maybe the person giving the message it's doesn't intend it to be, but they're the receiver, and because they lack the inability to reason, that feedback causes that reaction, right? It's all about how we, how we process the information, cognitive behavioral, like we're our cognition leads to the behavioral outcome, right? How we process the information. That's an excellent question. Thank you. So, how do we have our individuals recognize? So, notice when the feedback is happening, identify who is giving the feedback, and recognize common cues. One of the things I don't know if any you've either observed it in your individual is that depending on who is giving the feedback, it can make a difference, right? The person can be saying the same thing to the client, to our consumer, but they may not be receptive of it. But then it could be a change of phase, and someone else that they like, maybe a different, either could be a staff, it could be a supervisor, can be giving them that same information and they are more receptive of it. So we also want to understand that sometimes it's that connection, right? So I know some of you have experienced that some clients or consumers may not be able to work with their specific job coach, but then when you have them on your case, so they're like a different person, and it's not like the other person wasn't doing a good job. It's all about that connection, right? So for our individuals, we know that that matters to them, having that relationship. And if you agree to what I'm saying, you can put yes or no, or you can put in the chat what you've observed differently. Does the person giving the feedback make a difference or no? Sometimes, not all the time. Yes. Yeah. So our individual, so Jennifer says yes. So I guess Jennifer, you've experienced that, right? So also recognize common cues. Like, how do we teach them how to recognize a common cue that this is a feedback? This is not that you are in trouble, right? Notice when feedback is happening too. It's important. So we're going to move on to so common feedback cues. So there are examples of these are examples of common feedback cues, right? Next time I noticed change in tone or facial expression and being called aside, right? May I please speak with you? Or John, can you come to my office? Like those are all feedback cues that you're about to receive a feedback. So which cue do you see your consumers struggle to recognize most often? Which of the cues on this slide do your clients or consumers struggle to recognize most often? Is it next time, I noticed, change in tone or facial expression, or being called aside? Anyone? Okay, let's see. We have I noticed, okay, being called aside. Yes. So I noticed they being called aside. I try to use change of tone and all facial expressions. Being called aside hasn't worked well. Maybe it's my delivery. Yeah. It's probably not. It's just depend again. Um, what is the delivery method, Jeff? What were you saying? Like, is there a specific, if you want to give like an example, that would be very helpful to understand what you're saying. You could also feel free to unmute if that's easier. So some of our individuals may not next time, maybe either something that is common for them to notice, that is a feedback, change in tone of behavior, or facial expression. Sometimes people of our individuals may mistaken it as being that they're being mad at. My natural tone, I'm kind of have a loud speaking voice. I've learned to monitor that more often. Okay. So if again, it depends on the individual if they're not used to someone with just that natural command and voice, right? Okay. Thank you so much, Jeff, for clarifying and for sharing that example. That was very good. So teaching strategy spots. So we want to use cue words list. We have want to use visual cards. We also want to use role play practice and sorting, right? So this is where we slow things down to teach them proactive measures. So we want to practice spotting feedback before it happens on the job. Use repetition, visual aids, exaggerated examples, then fade out to realistic ones, right? So I always, and I don't know how many of you have experienced, but I find role play to be very um, productive and helpful our in to prepare our individuals for what's happening in the real life. So for example, play out like a scenario. So when I worked as a job coach, I had a client who was very nervous to work on the cash register because she was scared that she didn't know how to respond to difficult customers, right? So I created a scene where I am a difficult customer giving her a really, really hard time. So I told her, don't look at me as being me. Look at me as being that person. So first I gave her two scenarios. I gave her the very, few scenarios where I was very like the sweetest customer, right? And she handled that one great. And then when I turned out to be the customer giving her a really, really hard time, she didn't know how to respond to it. Even though it was me playing that role, she was very nervous and she was like and I was like giving feedback, but I was also trying to, of course, keep it in that professional way because at the end of the day, I was her job coach, and I didn't want her after that not to show up to sessions. But I was like, that's not what I bought. Why is this? This is not the price I saw. I think it's on the shelf as this price, like those type of ways. And I'm like, maybe you're not moving quick. I need to have somewhere to go. So things like that. And she was like, I don't, she said it was helpful for her because she didn't know how she was going to respond if she ended up working in retail because it didn't even only have to be at the cash register, even customer service or being on the floor. You can have a customer just come up to you and demand something that they need, and they're probably not going to be nice about it, right? So doing those role plays prepares them. You don't want to sometimes because you're like, oh, I don't want to put them through that, but it is important for their growth, for their benefit, because sometimes just saying it may not be enough for them. They have to actually experience that, you know, in a real life setting, like as part of your coaching. You're giving them those real scenarios. You're not making it all rosy for them because, as we know, in a competitive job market, it's not all sweet apples, right? So visual cards, some of our individuals are visual. Maybe when you're doing these work job related preparation, you want to have some visual aids, you want to have some sorting activities, want to also have those easy keywords list and also that role play so the individual can visualize, oh, she came one time and then they come to you and they say, oh, I had someone who was, challenging, or I had this lady and I knew what to do. They would be able to put all of these pieces together to help them navigate through the challenges of the workplace, right? Anybody want to share an experience of or a strategy that they use to support their clients in responding to feedback at the job? Feel free to put in the chat or unmute. I'm open to hear. We're all here to learn from each other. And one of the things I want to mention is that all our individuals do have strengths, right? So we want to identify what that strength is, help them identify what that strength is. And when you're skill teaching, use that strength that they have to help guide the skill teaching. So if their strength for you have an individual who is very friendly, to just friendly and sweet and just, that could be their strength. So how do you use that strength to teach them a skill of responding to feedback, right? Not saying that they should just they don't have a right to ask questions about feedback that is given. Yes, but some of people who are extremely sweet, happy. Sometimes when feedback is given to them off guard, they may panic, right? So, how do we help them, or how do we identify their specific strength and how we could use that to integrate into our skill teaching for that specific individual, making it more individualized to their strength, their skills, their knowledge, their experiences, and also their barriers. All right, okay? Any questions? All right. So the next one, one is so this is examples of the spot part of SCAF. So please, I want us to please identify in the chat, put Y for feed if it's a feedback and N for not feedback. So the first one is next time, please double check this. If you identify this as a feedback, please put Y in the chat. If you think it's not a feedback, please put N and good morning. Would you identify it as a Y or an N? And finally, I noticed you clocked in late today. Is that a feedback or not a feedback? And I see something is coming in the chat. So I got Y for Y and Y. So yes, no, yes. Okay, Jennifer, thank you. You got all of it. Anyone? Y? Okay, so I think Y and Y. So everybody's getting the same thing. So yes, everyone is right. So next time, please double check this is a feedback. And good morning. It's not a feedback, it's a greeting. And the final one is I noticed you clocked in late today. That is a feedback. So excellent. So now let's do the second activity. Which cue would most likely signal feedback? So you can choose to drop an emoji that fits, or you can just put if you think it's one, two, three, or four. You could identify as that. Absolutely. I will. Yes, I'm gonna email the I will, Aruna. Thank you so much for joining. You're gonna get it once the training is over and I send it over. Thank you so much. Words. Okay. So which cue would most likely signal feedback? Drop in the emoji. Okay. Words. Someone put words. Anybody else? Okay. So words. Excellent. Okay. So this what I thought was fun for us to do together. So step two, we want to clarify the feedback, right? So what does that mean? So we want to think of clear strategy, the clear. So clear stands for calm body, listen, explain back, ask questions, and repeat if needed. So, clarifying feedback is about understanding, not being defensive. And the clear strategy gives learners a structure that feels safe and professional to them. And finally, it emphasizes that asking questions shows responsibility and not disrespect, right? So, we want to be able to empower our individuals with these skills and strategies on how to manage when feedback is coming. So some people may share, you could also ask them when someone is giving you feedback, how do you start feeling? Someone may say, my heart starts pounding, right? Or someone who say, I start feeling, I start shaking because I feel really nervous because I feel like I'm in trouble. So you want to have them to think about when they are having this feeling, maybe they could do just a quick breathe and have a calm body, right? Listen, right? Because sometimes what happens is that some people's body language may not be calm. They're just ready to like, okay, come on. I know you're coming to say something that I don't want because that's how they take feedback, and I'm ready to come get you for it, right? Or teach them how to listen, and you could practice listening strategies with your individuals. What does listening mean? So I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a good listener." What does that mean? How do we listen? Right? So maybe those are things that you can work with your client. So the next one is explain back. That they could explain what I'm hearing you say, or I just to clarify what you're at, or you're telling me, are you trying, like for them to be able to explain back to the person what they're whoever is giving the feedback, oh, did you want me to what I understand is that you want me to sort out by color next time and not by sizes. And the supervisor could say yes, no, right? Ask questions if the person is not clear on what the feedback is. And finally, I think repeating the feedback if needed is very important, just so they know that they got step A, B, C in order to apply it to, moving forward what the feedback was. So clarifying sentence started. So the act responds helps our individuals respond without escalating the situation. So short, calm responses are often the most effective, especially early on, right? So, can you show me what you mean, right? That's excellent. So, if it's like, I don't need you to put all these things, I need you to just make it look neat. That is very vague. Make what look neat, right? Neat can be interpreted into so many different ways. So, for clients, our individuals or consumers can say, can you show me what you mean by making it look neat? So maybe making it look neat for me may be organize it by sizes, but maybe making it look neat is the store may have a way that they have to represent the display, right? And it cannot just be everything has to be in organized, like in sizes. It has to be colors to draw the customer's eyes to the product, right? So they're probably trying to advertise it for customers when they walk into the store. So, what should I do differently next time? It's a good sentence starter. Okay, I organized it by, you know, sizes. So, what should I do next time to make it look to fit the standards that you're looking for, right? And finally, so you want me to. So these are short but calm responses, right? We can always build complexity later. However, we want to teach our individuals simple before you go to complex because some of our individuals can't comprehend the complexity. They can only comprehend simple steps, which makes sense. For me, simple is best. So we can always, so which clarifying questions feels easier to teach? Which clarifying question on the slide do you find it's easy to teach your clients? Is it, can you show me? What should I do next time? What do you think would be is an easy one to teach? You could put one if you think it, can you show me? And two, what should I do next time? Just put something one and two. Okay. So one and two are clarifying questions that are easiest to teach. Thank you, Jeff. And I have more coming in the chat. One and two. Mai said one and two as well. Thank you, Mai. All right. So these are examples. Let's do some quick example activity together. Which questions would be the easiest to teach first? Please put in the chat if it's one, two, or three. Which one would be your go-to to teach your consumers first? Can you show me? What should I do next? Can you repeat that? So, okay, which one would be your go-to question first? Can you show me? Okay, that's good. Nick, thank you, Nicole. So, what I'm going to say, so you're going to say, so next time, please double check this. We talked about that. So, example two, I have two more in the chat. One, but I use three at times depending on the situation. Okay, Jeff. Thank you so much. Let me see what one, but you use three. Can you repeat that? Very good. Yes. That's important, right? Just to make sure you understand it clearly. So I think this is an example. So fill in the blank clarifier. So please type in one or two words to finish this sentence. So you want me to, so everybody can, we're all working on, so you want me to, so you're just adding like a word to complete the sentence. How would you want to complete this sentence? So it's a fill in the blank activity that we're doing. We want to clarify. So you want me to, with one word, what would you want how would you want to complete this sentence? So you want me to, it could be, so you want me to ask questions next time, or so you want me to, how, anything that you want to put in to complete it. So please type in one or two words to finish this sentence. I just think it's interesting for us to, let me see anything in the chat. Yeah. So you want me to organize the aisle better. So you want me to ensure that everything is, at its place, right? Okay. So let's see, have something in the chat. Be more clear. Thank you, Nicole. So yes, you want me to be more clear. That's a good one. So the next one step is answer professionally. So act. So first, when we're thinking answering professionally, when we're teaching that skill to our individuals, we want to have them think of it in the act way. So meaning A, acknowledge, C, calm tone and body, and T, thank or take responsibility, right? So the act response help our individuals respond without escalating the situation. So short, calm responses, right, is often most effective. So we want to use that, teach them that calm. You acknowledge the by saying thank you for the feedback. Oh, I appreciate you letting me know. In a very calm tone and body language. And finally, thank or take responsibility. So the levels of acceptable is basic, standard, and advanced, right? So not every response has to be perfect. So this is not to say that individuals have to be these perfect employee, so perfect at everything, because that can be also cause a lot of stress for them at work. But teach what's good enough first, right? So we want to also avoid, want to teach them what is basic. Some people may be someone who always just says okay, is their language that's easy, that comes to them naturally, right? And somebody may say okay, I understand, and an advanced would be thanks, I'll work on that. So you have to see what level is your client at and what is comfortable to them, right? Because we don't want to move them from that comfort zone and try to incorporate all these advanced skills that may confuse them and make it overwhelming, and it may not be a positive experience for them in learning that specific skill. So what we also want to avoid in this is that we want to be able to avoid that, help. Not every response is perfect or acceptable, but we also don't want them to go arguing with their supervisors or over explaining or shutting down or ignoring the feedback totally, because if they ignore the feedback, they're not more than likely, well, they're not going to work on that area of need, to that area of need that they have to improve. They're just going to be like, I'm too good, I'm not working on that, and there's nothing you can do, right? Or shutting down can probably lead to them having, you never know what it can arise. They can start feeling maybe very nervous at work, or it can cause them to start having certain symptoms, um, if it's related to mental health, and may end up losing the job or over explaining, or the worst, arguing with their boss, which can lead them to being fired, right? So, for example, if you create a real life scenario with them where that it's challenging, and you get to see how they're going to respond to it. So it's just you and them and you're role playing. If it's an arguing strategy, they're using arguing to get through that, then you want to be able to coach them and say, oh, when we were practicing, blah, 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 I see this is how we were responding. How could we have done it better? I understand that you did it the way, what came natural to you, but how is that going to help you keep your job? They may tell you no. Is that going to help you? You know, you could let them say, how would that type of response, what is the benefit to that type of response? And what is the not so good things on that type of response, right? And let them tell you and let them recognize it. And then you can coach them to um, graduate, coach them to a more appropriate work response than arguing or shutting down, ignoring, or over explaining. Okay. So this example, so which response is safest for a beginner? Like if we're teaching someone this skill, which response do you think is safe to them? Put A, B, or C. So you could please type in the chat and unmute or unmute. Either way, love to hear everyone's voice as well. So please feel free to put A if you think A is the safest response for someone you're teaching who is a beginner to respond into feedback, or B or C. Just please put it, type A, B, C. Okay. I see C for Nicole. So C, Nicole, you're saying C for beginners. Okay. Is the safest for a beginner? Excellent. Be more. Okay. Very good. So Nicole, Omar, my, very good. Ellen, Jennifer. Okay. I said, so everybody is agreeing to C. And can someone choose to tell me why C? Okay. So now let's do something fun with it. So let's take each word and upgrade it. One more word, upgrade it by just one more word. So if you put okay, what would you upgrade another word to go with okay? See, polite and shows respect, courtesy. Absolutely, Jeff. Excellent. Thank you so much. So, okay. So, what would we put? Is it okay? I understand. Is it what word could we put next to okay to upgrade it, to move it a level higher? And I understand. What word could we put next to it to move it a level higher if we're teaching someone, one of our consumers, this skill? And finally, thanks for telling me. What what word could we put next to it to upgrade it one step higher? Anyone wants to try? I think it's fun. Okay, okay, thank you. Very good, Jeff. Anyone else? I love that. Okay, thank you. That's so me. Okay, thank you so much. Good, Jeff. Anyone who wants to tackle I understand. How do we upgrade I understand? I appreciate your feedback. Very good. Okay, thank you for telling me. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you, Nicole. That's great. Or it could be I understand. I appreciate your feedback. Very good. Thank you. That was fun. Thanks for participating, everyone. So, step 4 is the follow up of SCAF. So, we have S for spot, and then C for clarify. Then we went to answer respectfully, professionally, or respectfully. And now we are in follow up. So, we follow up, we want to follow up here is where turns into growth, right? Being able to take that feedback, apply it, and follow up with your supervisor about it, or teaching our clients to follow up with your supervisor or manager. That shows growth. So we first want to make the change, right? We want to encourage them to make that change, and of course before they make the change, you have to accept that feedback, check back in if unsure, and finally use reminders or supports, right? So they could use their natural supports here. If they're not sure or are missing a step, that's something they probably could use a colleague or even just follow up with their supervisor. I've just to clarify, I did all of these, which is I know it's in the C part, but sometimes implementing it to the person may miss something, and it's okay to use colleagues. Oh, I remember this is all I have to do. Did I get all of the steps correct? Something like that, right? And it's okay to check back if they're unsure, right? So it's feedback. We want to let them know that feedback may be given once. It's not that it's perfect, like you could get it that one time. No, we want to encourage them that if they're not clear, it's okay for them to go back and speak to their supervisor to clarify what it's unclear to them, right? And finally, feedback action plan. So this we're going to stay on for a little bit and just to talk about the feedback action plan. What was the feedback, right? What needs to change and when will I do it? And who can help? So I'm after we're going, so before I go into each of the steps, which step of the feedback action plan do you think would help the person to support the most that you help the person you support the most right now? So you could put one, two, three, four. So one would be what was the feedback? Two would be what needs to change. Three will be when will I do it? And four will be who can help. Okay. Two. Okay, so Nicole said two for her. One needs to change. Okay. So now let's take each one. So this simple action plan makes feedback concrete, right? So it's especially helpful for our individuals who struggle with memory, organizing, or anxiety. So the first question is about, which is what was the feedback? It's about separating what was said from how it felt, right? So many of our individuals immediately jump to meaning. They're mad at me. Oh, I'm in trouble, right? That's feeling of, and like I said, some you even see it in their body language. They're either shaking or they may call you at the lunchtime and say, I think my manager is mad at me or I'm getting fired. And then you rush over there only to find out that they're not getting fired. They got a feedback and the world is crashing. Their world is crashing, right? So what we want to slow that down and teach them to identify the actual feedback message. Yes, this is how you're feeling, but let's separate those feelings from what the supervisor actually said so we can actually work on it, right? So in a neutral language. So a helpful teaching strategy here is to encourage learners to repeat the feedback using phrases like, the feedback was that I need to, right? Like the feedback was that I needed to work on my organization skills, or my supervisor said I should be come to work on time, right? So we want to help them separate their feelings from what was actually said. So if learners struggle, job coaches can help by paraphrasing the feedback together, right? So if you're processing that feedback together with them, they can then realize that, oh, the feedback was not meant because they were mad at me or because I was in trouble or because I did something wrong. Is that there was an actual message or something that I really needed to work on, right? So if the goal is accuracy, not perfection. So the teaching tip here is we want to be clear. We also want to have manageable steps for our individuals so they're able to follow through. The first focus on this identifying what the feedback actually was is separating the message from the feelings and assumptions, right? That helps a lot. So you also want to empower your individuals to recognize the message that was in. So you just tell them, let's talk about this. Tell me everything. They may tell you everything from when they went to eat, from lunch, and then they came back, and then this happened, and then the supervisor called them, and then that's happened. And then you can tell them, now let's separate all of these things you're saying, which one led to which one. So now they're telling you everything, but you probably already, from what they're telling you, already recognize what was the feedback, but they are not seeing it. So help them break it apart. All the message, the information they give you, let them actually identify that feedback on their own rather than if you do it for them, because then sometimes they may be upset and think that you're working alongside the job, their manager, and you're mad at them as well. But if they're able to recognize it, that helps them better. So the next one is what needs to change. So the what needs to change part of it is that making sure that they know keeping their focus as concrete and achievable actions. What are they going to do to maybe come back from lunch on time? And now, because some of our individuals go to lunch and may not come back on time, right? It could be a 15-minute lunch and they're taking a half an hour lunch because maybe they're too tired, or maybe they're on the phone, or they're having a very important conversation that with their colleague or coworker, right, at work, which is at the lunchroom, which is so good to leave that conversation. But we want to be able to keep their focus on what's concrete and achievable steps on how they're going to change this behavior of returning to work. I mean, returning from lunch break on time. They could set an alarm, right? You could tell them, let's set an alarm so you can get returned from lunch on time. And the third action step is, when do I do it? How are they going to do it? So here are anchors to that change, a specific time or situation. So which supports their memory that they can follow through. So setting an alarm, it's actually an actionable step that they could use, because when the alarm goes off, if they have to return in 15 minutes, they don't have to stay there for 15 minutes eating. Then they take 10 more minutes to go to the bathroom before they get to work, because now that is 25 minutes break compared to just 15 minutes, which maybe they can set an alarm until 10, 5 minutes to go back, use the bathroom, wash your hands, and get back to work, right? So the final one is, which is, we want to be able to, who can help me, right? So maybe this is something, who can I help? So in this action step, maybe you can help them identify appropriate supports, like a coworker, supervisor that they take the same lunch with, or their or you, the you, the support, you may be their support person. How to set the, allocate each lunch time in order to make sure that they're getting to work back on time and not late. So how many of you may probably have different action plan, but how many of you have seen that or have experienced your individuals having challenges returning from their lunch break on time? Anybody? Is that a struggle for most of your individuals, or they're pretty good with that? Okay. So teaching tips for job coaches. Things. So teaching tips for job coaches. So teach offsite. So we want to do the effective feedback instructions. We want to start offsite, right? Before the problems occur. So this can be built into your meeting time with the client. So as job coaches or employment specialists or vocational counselors, we should teach feedback skills proactively and provide offsite practice. So when they go to work, they're not now, it's not just all coming to them, right? So during that, going into employment, you're searching for job, you're submitting job applications, you're submitting resumes, you're also spending some time with them to build soft skills, work related soft skills, right? You also want to practice before feedback happens. How are they going to be able to accept feedback? Use visual and script. So some people may do well with writing, having a little script down for them. Some people may keep it in their pockets. And finally, you want to fade out that support gradually, right? But not to completely terminate the support, but we want to empower them with these skills and strategies that they're able to implement without you being there to always, you know, do it on behalf of them, right? But you could also still teach them out of, work time. Any questions? It actually ends at 9:10. What time? Actually ends at 10. It's a 90-minute webinar. This one is a 90-minute webinar. But okay. Yeah. So example one, follow up. Jordan works in a grocery store. A supervisor says, we're almost coming to the end of this webinar. Jordan says, I've noticed you're really friendly with customers, but you need to move a little faster at the register during busy times. After this feedback, what is one follow-up action Jordan could take? So what is a follow-up? that you think would be beneficial to Jordan? You could put in the chat. Is it that so the supervisor says to Jordan that she's very friendly but needs to move a little faster? So Jordan can follow up to check with her supervisor to see if she's actually and has implemented the feedback. Is she moving a little faster than she was before? It's a good follow up, and the supervisor could either let her know yes or no. And an activity, so match the feedback to the follow up. So here we can type the number and letter. So slow down when checking out customers. What is the follow up option? Is that ask for example or use a reminder or check back? And the next one is place label boxes before storing them. So here we is identifying which one fits where, right? So if someone says to your client, slow down when checking out customers, is it something that they have to ask for an example or use a reminder or check back? So maybe ask for an example, right? Slow down. What does that look like? Maybe they work so fast. Or they could also check back with their manager about this feedback. And then finally, please label boxes before storing them back. So that they could put a reminder to remind them that when they label the boxes before storing them, that they have something to a reminder to check, and also they could also check back on the task that they did before putting it to be completed. And finally, so this repeatable routine our individuals can learn to use to know how to respond to feedback, right? Because first they will know that they have to spot if it's a feedback, they have to clarify to ensure that they understand the feedback, and they have to respond respectfully and follow up with their supervisor. So to end, to almost, yeah, about to end, put in the chat, write one word for each step of SCAF. So for example, if you want to put S for spot, what would you replace S with? Spots, what is another word you could use for spots, right? Who wants to try? You could put in the chat if it's notice. So spot, notice, clarify could be asked, right? So people may not be able to remember clarify, but they could remember asked. Answer could be okay. And finally, follow up could be just that you're practicing it. And so finally, we want so you want we did this activity on so you want me to, and we filled it out. So finally, these are the key takeaways: is responding to feedback is of course a learned skill, and the acronym SCAF gives our individual a shared language and structure to be able to identify when to spot a feedback, clarify, answer appropriately and respectfully, and finally follow up. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel teaching the skill now to your consumers? Please feel free to put in the chat if it's 1, 5, and I'm sure some of you are already doing this already. And also, please type one word that describes how this training might help you work with your individuals. All right. 4, 4. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And I just want to, before you go, I want to put the PowerPoint slide in the chat and a handout document for everybody. So don't leave yet. I also want to include, thank you so much, mindful and intentional. Thank you, Brittany. I also want to make sure that I put the link to the survey. So I just want to ensure I read this. Thank you. We appreciate your time, attention, and participation. Today's webinar was hosted by DBHR through the Washington Health Care Authority. We would like to remind you that the slides, a link to the recordings of this session, and wealth of other resources will be available in follow-up email. Don't forget to check out our foundational community support newsletter for all things FCS and upcoming training events. And here's the contact information. And for those of you who want to scan to be able to complete the survey, it would be great. And I just want to Yes, you're gonna get a link to the slide. So if you bear with me, I'm gonna stop sharing because I want to be able to put the handouts in the chat. And I think I have the PowerPoint. It's gonna be, just bear with me. Let me try to see if I can get you the PowerPoint now in the chat. And then you're going to also get the PowerPoint, and I also am going to put the link, the survey link in the chat for those of you who want to be able to access that right away. And I'm going to put the slides in the chat.